thanks so much for making the time to see us while you're still over here in the UK. It's been a while that you've been over here now, hasn't it?
It's been a minute. Yeah, thanks for having me. Great to have you here. Yeah, we're in my flat in Brighton, so welcome.
How long have you? How much you spent weeks and weeks in the UK this year?
I have, yeah. I've been here close to half the year. You know, I was here all through the summer for fight camp, and I've been here for a number of months now. You know, through the shows in Milton Keynes and Peterborough. We've had a residency, obviously, at Wembley, and you know, and then Joshua got added to that. So we got the AJ fight this Saturday. It's the big one, heavyweight championship of the world, baby.
We did just, or before we went live, you actually said the name of the podcast, Boxing Life Stories. If you were announcing Boxing Life Stories, would it be Boxing Life Stories Stories or Boxing Life Stories Life Stories?
I think it might just have to be Boxing Life Stories, Boxing Life Stories. I feel like it's I feel like it's kind of a one-word thing, you know?
Yeah.
It feels like it's not like Boxing Life Stories. Or Boxing Life Stories. If it was that, then I'd say Boxing Life Stories. But I feel like it's Boxing Life Stories. It is what it says, and that's how I would do it.
So going to Boxing Life Stories, obviously we'll kick things right back. What was your first exposure to boxing?
Well, basically as early as I can remember watching the fights. So boxing's always been big in my family, with the men in my family, my dad, my cousins, and then there were just a lot of fights growing up, right? It was a very physical situation growing up. And my house was physical, and my dad was my first trainer. And, you know, he was also, in a way, my first opponent. You know, there was a lot of physical abuse that I suffered in my house. And in the street, there were a lot of fights, obviously. And it's funny because it wasn't even just with your enemies. Sometimes you just fight with your friends because it's what it is. Like we were kids, we were active, we were out doing everything. And you could be playing with some friends at 1 minute, and the next minute you're throwing rocks at each other, and then it's a fist fight. Or you're playing football, and then you're in a fist fight. Or you're playing basketball, and then it's fist fight. That literally happened just on the daily. I mean, that's just what it was. And then... But it started, obviously, to get more serious as I got older.
You're a fifth-generation Brooklynite.
Yes, but I was not born in Brooklyn. I was born in Baltimore. So this is the whole thing, is that my dad... So my mom's family was a little bit bougie, and my dad's family was from the wrong side of the tracks. So my family never really got along. And so the issue is this. Like, I was conceived in New York. My mom carried me for 7 months there, and the family was just fighting too much. You know, my sister was born there. But my parents just said, we need to get out of here. There's too much dissension. And so they went to Baltimore, and I was born in Baltimore. And then, you know, but that's the thing, is my whole family was in Brooklyn. So I always came back. So I spent a lot of time there, but I didn't grow up there. And I kind of grew up in like Virginia, DC, and Maryland, that whole area. Okay. You know, so I lived in Northern Virginia. I lived in DC. I lived in Maryland, that whole area.
What kind of places, like rural or urban?
So mixture. And where I really grew up was more Virginia, Northern Virginia. And at the time it was very rural, but it was so close to the urban. It was amazing. So it was like literally 15 minutes down the road, you're in the middle of Washington, DC. But I had like there was like an old mill, there were lakes, there was woods. You know, it's really, Tris, one of those things that I feel like has helped me be the person I am, is that as diverse as I am, because I'm a little bit country, I'm a little bit, you know, I mean, I love the country, but I'm a city guy. Yeah. I mean, I'm a city boy through and through, but at the same time, like, I love the country.
You can appreciate it.
Yeah, well, very much. And not just that, I'm resourceful. Like, you put me in the woods, man, I'll be like Bear Grylls, man. You know what I mean? I'll survive. So I know what I'm doing out in the woods, and I'm good with camping. I'm good with making a fire. Like, I can get down and dirty. But I mean, at the end of the day, I am a city guy. But I really do love country, and I could see at some point in my life maybe being out there in the sticks. And I love nature, so that kind of gave me a little bit of both worlds, and I think that really helped me out a lot, because now it's just been so urban for so many years. You know.
What did your parents do?
My mom was a teacher. And my dad worked his way up. He went to Queens College. You know, like I said, he came from a very poor family. They had nothing. And my dad, you know, the thing about my dad is that when he was born, my grandfather was at war and he didn't know him. So he didn't have a connection with his father. And so when my grandfather came back, there was a very big disconnect. And then they had my uncle, which was my dad's younger brother, who they loved because, you know, they were both there and he was there and he's a different guy. And he's actually a big inspiration to me. He was a drummer. He rides motorcycles, which, you know, I do both of those things. He's way more of a free spirit. But my dad was very stern, and my dad still is very stern. And my dad's always been a fighter. My dad loves to fight. He's kind of an angry man. And he's not a bad person, but he's always taken the road less traveled. He always wants to go the hard route. He doesn't do the easy thing. He's really big about like work ethic and this and that. And he didn't, like, if my mom wanted to make me a sandwich, he would be like, don't do that for him. You know, we'd be in the car, like me and my brother and my sister on like a really hot summer day. You know, the East Coast, it's miserable. Like it gets really miserable. You know, people I don't think understand how hot it gets over there. You know, you hear the 3 H's, hazy, hot, and humid, like you can't breathe. So we'd be in the back of the car all day. They're driving us around and we're like, Dad, we're thirsty. He'd be like, drink your spit. You know, my dad was very, that's how he was. You know, that's my dad.
It's proper, beyond old school.
My dad's old school, and my grandfather used to beat on him.
Yeah.
So he used to beat on me. And the thing is, he never touched my sister really. And my brother came later, and he had seen all the damage that had happened with me. And he was like, so him and my brother have a better relationship. Him and my sister have a better relationship, but him and I have always been at odds. And so anyway, he put his way through law school, and he became a trial lawyer.
Okay.
He became a trial lawyer, so that's what he did.
Did you deserve the beatings that you got? Because it's quite a big thing when you look at corporal punishment and that kind of stuff. People talk about it in modern day society, and it's been a big thing over years about people disciplining their kids. And
I think it's a great question, and I'll give you the answer very plain and simply. With my dad, no, not with my dad. My mom, yes. Every time my mom put hands on me, I had it coming. That's why I've never held it for one moment against my. I mean, I have literally scars from my mom even, but I never was mad at my mom because anytime she laid hands on me, you better believe I deserved it. Yeah. So I never held that against her, you know.
And did it teach you right from wrong?
No, I mean, well, I mean, this is the thing, Tris. I believe we all know what's right from wrong in us. It's like instilled. Like the thing is, when you ever have to ask a question, you know the answer already. Should I do this? You know you should, or you know you shouldn't. That's why you're asking, because you want a different answer than the one that you know what it is. Because usually it's hard. Any question you're asking, you already know the answer. So I'm not talking about knowledge, but I'm talking about an ethical right or wrong question. Sure. You know what it is. So we know what it is, you know. We know what it is.
Were you into other sports, or was boxing just the thing?
I loved all sports, but boxing always fascinated me because fighting was such an integral part of my life. But I loved soccer. I was really good at soccer. I played football. I played basketball. I played baseball. I rode. I was really into skateboarding. I swam. I love swimming. Okay. So I swam, and then later, like I surfed, and you know, we used to ride bicycles. I mean, I was just into being physical, right? Like, and then, yeah, I was really into running. Like, I felt like when I was a kid, I felt like I could run for days. Like I felt like, literally, you know, when you take a dog to the park and you get them off the leash and they just, yeah. Like, that was me. Like, I just didn't want to stop. And like in soccer, I loved to play halfback because I could run, so I could defend and then I could attack. So then I could just run. I just wanted to run the whole field. Like, I didn't want any leash on me. You know, that's how I felt. So I always loved that. And then, you know, obviously the drugs came in, the smoking came in, and that affected me greatly. And
then the music came in as well. Like, who did you idolize as a kid? Or I don't know if idolize is too strong a word, but who did you look up to? Did you look up to musicians or sports or athletes?
So I don't idolize anyone, never really have, but yes, I do have influences for sure. And music it was and still is a very integral part of my life. So I started playing drums in 5th grade. And basically in 5th grade, they told us, you got to pick an instrument. And my uncle played drums, and I loved the drums. And so I was like, I'm going to do drums. And so I chose the drums. And now keep in mind, I went to school a year early. So my mom put me in school a year early. So I was always with older kids. I was always with bigger kids. I never felt that. I didn't know that. I didn't even know that till later in my life. My mom told me that. And my mom she feels like she has all this guilt now. Like, she's like, I shouldn't have done that. But I'm like, I mean, I'm fine. I never
right
had,
now.
Yeah, I never had an issue with it.
Yeah.
Ever, that was nothing. And to me, I think it was better. It's like I was always around bigger kids. And so, I mean, it was hard because of the fighting, because these kids were developing quicker than I was, right? And so when we hit a certain age and I was getting into serious fights, sometimes I would not get the best of it. So I think that's why she felt kind of bad about that. But at the end of the day, so I started playing drums. And then very early on, I met this guy in school who was like a punk rocker. And he was a really cool guy. And at this point, I'd never even heard of punk rock. I was like a little kid. And I was really into skateboarding. I loved skateboarding. And we didn't have a lot of money. We weren't poor, but we didn't have a lot of money. My dad would not buy me anything except like the bare essentials. So like if I wanted a bike, he bought one at a garage sale for like $10. Like he was like, and all my friends had mongooses and red lines and Haros, and like, I couldn't have that. And if I wanted a skateboard, like I had to get like a little janky ass skateboard. And I saved up my money because I started working very, very early because I had to work because my dad wouldn't pay for anything. So, I mean, he'd pay for the food and for the clothes, but like even shoes, like if we wanted Nikes, which of course everyone wants Nikes when you're a little kid. And I mean, I literally have the memory in my head. Like my dad would go to the store and he'd be like, well, these shoes here are, $10. These Nikes are $25. And he'd take them and he'd bend them like he didn't know anything about shoes, but he'd take them and he'd bend that one. He'd go, looks like the same shoe to me. So that's the one you're getting. I'm not paying for a label. And he used to always say, I'm not going to pay to advertise for a brand. Why would I do that? It makes no sense. Which is true. It's very true. And
My dad used to say that too, actually.
And that got instilled in me. And my mom, she even tried to buy him like the Izod shirts or the polo shirts. He wouldn't wear them. Take them back. Yeah. So he wouldn't wear it. So but that did get instilled in me, because when I see these people walking around in their Gucci and their Fendi and their Louis, I don't want to judge, but I almost feel sorry for these people, because if that's what you think gets you clout, like buying a brand and advertising for these people that don't care about you, I don't understand that.
I remember that. You know what? That's a flashback that's given me. But I must have been about 13 or 14. Maybe just bought my first designer T-shirt, brand all the way across the front. My dad said to me, "How much are they paying you to wear it?"
That's right. That's exactly right.
Crazy.
So music. So Darren and I started a band, and we started a punk rock band, and I started hearing all these bands that I had never heard of, right? And I was living in the DC area, and at the time, Bad Brains, Minor Threat, Black Market Baby, Scream, Faith, Void, Dag Nasty, Government Issue, Marginal Man, so many great bands from that era. And then tons of other bands from all over, because the hardcore scene was exploding at that time. Suicidal and the Adolescents in L.A., the Big Boys, down in Texas. You had, all these bands from Boston, bands from Baltimore, bands from Richmond, bands from the UK. So, obviously tons of great punk rock here from the UK, the Exploited and GBH and the Business and all these just great bands, right? So I started getting really into this scene, and the thing about it was, I was an angry kid because I wasn't safe at home and I wasn't safe in the streets. And I never believed the stuff that my parents told me. They would say stuff that it just didn't sound right to me. And like at the end of the day, I believe my parents loved me. It's not about that, but like they themselves didn't know, like they're miserable people. To me, I'm sorry for that. I really am. It's not that they don't have joy in their life. I think they do have joy in their life at times, but they're very stressed out. They're very miserable people in a lot of ways. And I didn't want to live like that. I saw that. I mean, this is at a young age, Tris. And when I started meeting these alternative friends and people, I was like, this is me. I felt like I found my tribe.
Is that where the drugs came in and the feel good factor from the drugs as well? And how that sort of made you feel?
The drugs very first started. There was a place in my neighborhood called the Track. Now, the Track was an empty lot that the developers, when they were building my housing development, they didn't develop. So it was this like vacant lot. And there was an older kid that rode motorcycles that lived right next to the Track. And they got a bulldozer and they made this incredible track, like a dirt track for their motorcycles. So there were berms and jumps. And we were little kids, so we used to ride our bikes out there. Now, this is the 70s, I'm not a young guy. So this is in the 70s. So all these kids would be out there in their muscle cars, blah, 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 blah. Their Chevelles and their Camaros and all that. And everyone was getting high and doing drugs. So I was back there one day because we used to skate back there, and then we used to ride our bikes back there, and then we used to fight back there. Anything we did bad was the Track. And the other thing about the Track was it led out into the city. So that was another thing. So we used to go through the Track and go through the woods, and then we'd head off. It was the gateway. Yeah. So like it was awesome because we could head up to the 7-Eleven and get in a bunch of trouble. So that's where I first did drugs, because I remember one of my buddies, we were back there, and he pulled up, he had an army hat. And he took off his army hat, and in the lining he had these joints, and
like ammunition.
Yeah, no, they weren't on the outside; they were on the inside,
okay,
so you couldn't see them. But it was like he had them hidden in there, and we got high. And what's crazy is that the very first time I came home, my mom was allergic to smoke, and I came home, and she immediately was like, "You've been smoking? Oh my God!" And I like. It was almost like I was always in trouble, so I just didn't care.
Yeah.
And they knew it wasn't cigarettes because it smelled funky, and I just didn't care. And then it was just on, and it was like a war. Like I was at war with my family and with my just that home situation was really tough. And what got crazy was it wasn't just marijuana, because at the time, in that area, there were a lot of other drugs, and I'll just leave it at that. But there was a lot of drugs, PCP, and a lot of stuff at the time was going on.
Sure.
So things got pretty hairy pretty quick.
At what point did you go back to Brooklyn?
You're like really fast forwarding.
Okay.
Decades
on.
You're really fast forwarding.
Okay.
There's several lifetimes before that happens.
Yeah, because I understand you started to box when you were out in California.
I did. So anyway, we could fast forward that, the DC days, the Virginia, the DC, the Maryland days, it got very rough, and I got very deep into the scene, and I was running with a crew. We'll just say it that, and I played in bands also. I played in a punk band called LDK, Learning Disabled Kids, which got pretty big at the time, and then our singer was killed. And then I shattered this knee in a fight, 8 pieces. This knee got shattered in a fight. And then, so I couldn't play drums. And then this guy named Tim Berry took over for me on drums. And then they all moved to Richmond, and they kind of morphed, and they turned into a band called Avail. So there's a punk band called Avail. And Tim Berry, the guy that took over for me on drums, he's the singer of Avail now. But things progressed in a very tough way. Okay. And I had left my house by this point. I'd left my house, and I had already, at this point, I had traveled around America. So I drove around the country with some friends in a bus at a very early age. So I had seen a lot of America. So I had traveling in me. I always wanted to travel. I always wanted to explore. I always had a dream of going to overseas, but I had no money. So I traveled with friends. So I knew there was more out there, and I wanted more. I wanted to do more. There's a song by Suicidal Tendencies that always strikes me very deep. So I want more, and it's like, I want more, and it's not like greedy. I want more, but I just want more with my life.
There's more to it.
Yeah. Not that I want more like money wise. It's, I want more. Like I just want more. There's something better than this. There's something deeper than this. And I knew that,
So even though because obviously when you're doing the stuff that you were doing there, talking about bands and drugs and that kind of stuff, you're very much living for the moment. You're not thinking really what you want in your life, unless you have those deep contemplative moments or trips or whatever where you think there's more to it than this.
I wasn't thinking about the future, especially like with what I wanted to do or like a job. That wasn't even like a thought. That wasn't even a thought. It was more like I was angry and I wanted to lash out in any type of way I could. And I just wanted to, like, hardcore is not just a style of music, but it's a lifestyle. Do you know what I mean? And I was hardcore. You know, in a way, I still am hardcore. Very much so. And I don't think that ever leaves me, even though I'm a very different person now. And I don't have anger in me. Now I have gratitude in me. But that all changes. I mean, this is the thing, Tris. Like, so there's some very interesting, deep moments that happened in my life that we don't have time to go all into at this time. But when I did make my change mentality-wise, when I realized this crew that I was so down for, I was ready to give my life for, when I realized it was all a bunch of fucking bullshit, that was the last, I stopped cutting my hair. That was 1988. And that's when I have these dreads 33 years now. You know, that's the last time I ever cut my hair because I just was disillusioned with that scene that I believed in so much. I had found a family outside of my home, right? Because I didn't feel like I had it at my house. So I found a family in the street. And when certain things fell through and people didn't do what you expect of them, I'll just leave it at that. I was disillusioned.
Sure.
And I said, this is fucking bullshit. And not only that, I got in a lot of trouble, and I don't want to go further with that because I don't want to incriminate myself on anything, but I got in a lot of trouble. And I was going to either end up dead or in jail if I didn't get clean. And I ended up in a rehab. I ended up coming out and relapsing, and all this kind of stuff happened. And I couldn't stay clean around the people I was around because it was all...
That was the environment.
Well, it was the environment, and like, I mean, I went through a lot of tough times as far as like, I didn't have a place to live. I lived in shooting galleries. I lived in squats. I lived at friends' houses. I lived wherever I could. I lived on benches. I lived in DuPont Circle. At the time, it's real posh, but it wasn't like that back then. You know, 14th Street was the host stroll. Like, everything was messed up. And DC was a crazy time. This was Marion Barry. The mayor was smoking crack. You know, DC was murder capital. But DC's an amazing city. And the hardcore scene, the go-go scene, there's so much that comes out of Washington, DC. It's an amazing city. So I'm very proud of living there and really having come up there for a lot of my years. But I needed to get out of there to save my life. And I pulled a geographic. It's called pulling a geographic, you know. And I found there was an old punk rock cafe called Food for Thought. And it's long gone now, but this is way pre-internet for the people out there listening. And there was the people used to put flyers up on bulletin boards.
Yeah, sure.
And there was like one-way train ticket to California, $65. And I was like, I can afford that. And, you know, it has those little stubs where you pull one. I pulled the whole motherfucker. I said, I'm taking this because I was like, I'm gonna buy it. And I called and I bought the ticket and I left. And I took a 5-day train ride out to California, and there I was. Now, I had been to California earlier on that trip around the country. I'd been to San Francisco, I'd been to Los Angeles, and I figured I'd end up in LA. But when I got out there, the train ticket was to San Francisco, so that's where I was. And I had a contact, this guy, Michael Belfer, just a musician, famous musician. I think he played with the Nuns. But anyway, so I had like 52 days clean or something like that. And I was really going through a lot of hard stuff. And I met up with Mike. He took me to a meeting. And he wasn't really supportive. To be honest, he wasn't cool. I didn't like him at all. And I was just like, screw it. And I went out and I started using again. And I had an apartment in the Tenderloin. And things got really bad at that point. And then I obviously got evicted from that apartment, and things just got very, very rough. And when I finally came back to the rooms, I came back with some humility and ready to take some suggestions, because I was never willing to do that at the time. And at this time, I was now 21. So I mean, you talk about growing up kind of quick. You know, I'd been through so much at that point. I mean, I've skipped through a lot of stuff, but there's a lot that's gone on, okay, in my life. So at that point, I get out there, and I finally I got a sponsor who's now one of my very best friends in the world. Love him, love him. He's like my brother, and we've done so much together. He's an incredible guy. He had a couple years clean at the time, and he took me under his wing. And then I met like a real family of amazing men and women that were clean, but they were cool and they were living great lives. And then the music continued. I started playing with a band called Sharkbait. They had just gotten off Lollapalooza. I think it was 1994. They had toured Lollapalooza on the side stage. So I joined that band. It's funny because I went to go see them, and I was like blown away. I thought they were great. I mean, they were great. There was fire, and they were crushing things. They were this incredible industrial band. And I was like, man, they were so cool. And then I was at a party a couple weeks later, and this huge bald guy, like really muscular bald guy. His name is Mr. Clean, Derek. We called him Mr. Clean. He was in the band, and he was there, and I overheard him saying, yeah, we're looking for a new drummer. And I was like, hey, I'm a drummer. And he was like, oh, you should come out. And so I went for the audition. I got the gig, started playing with them. And then, I was friends with the guys from Metallica, and Kirk from Metallica, asked me to give him drum lessons. So I gave Kirk drum lessons. So I used to hang out with Kirk, go to his house. He would come to my house. We recorded together. I just played in all these different bands. I played with bands with Jason from the Meatmen and from 9353 and all kinds of guys. And then Harley from the Cro-Mags came out, stayed with me when I was living out there. Just incredible things happened out there. But the main thing is I was able to stay clean. And
how hard was it being, still being involved in music at that level and staying clean? Or did people respect the fact that you were trying?
Well, so two different things. Staying clean is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Okay. The hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And, I have two major scars on my chest that, I'm sure none of you guys have ever seen, but, I did some type of very deep ritual that I don't necessarily want to talk about here, but they're very deep. I mean, they've been there now, 28 years. And they're never going to go away. And, but they're to remind me of my last week using and my first week clean. Because I thought to myself, if I can always remember those, I will never have to go back and do this. So for me, staying clean is the hardest thing I've ever done, but had nothing to do with what you just said. I don't care what anyone does. I don't feel peer pressure. Like, I don't care. I always have marched to my own drum. That's what I do. That's never been an issue. Like we talked a little bit earlier off camera before this, I worked in the club scene for many, many years. So, I mean, I've seen everything. I worked in clubs where the managers, I'm not lying, they used to come and put Tabasco and pepper on all the rails because people did too much coke off everything and they were sick of it. And they were trying to stop the coke. Like, that stopped it, please. But, I mean, I've seen people blow coke off and drugs off of every body part right in front of me, offer me. I mean, I've been offered the best stuff in the world, but for me, when you build a house, Tris, you start with a foundation, right? And you dig deep and you build that and you solidify it. Then you can build the tallest building and it'll stay. You can build the most beautiful building, but if there's no foundation, it's going to topple right over. My foundation's always been strong with that because I did it for me. I didn't do it for the cops. I didn't do it for my parents. I didn't do it for a girlfriend. I did it because of me. So that's never been an issue. But it's hard to stay clean in general for me, for anyone.
Now, even now?
No, now it's different because now I've been sober longer than I ever used drugs or drank alcohol. So and I feel sorry for people that do that. I really do. It's like, you didn't get that memo. Like, you didn't get you guys are still doing coke or heroin or whatever you're doing. Like, it's just gross. Like, I couldn't even imagine doing that to my body. And not only that, I truly believe that drugs hit a certain, drugs basically trigger natural things in your brain, like endorphins and things like that. If you already know the path to get there, which I do, because I've basically done everything that's out there, I can get there without that. So I have that ability. So I get high every day. Like, I'm high now talking to you because, like, you're a great guy. I'm excited. It's a great day. I'm smoking a beautiful cigar. Like, I'm alive. You know what I mean? Like, I'm doing so many great things. This weekend, I'm calling the heavyweight championship of the world. I mean, this is great stuff, right? I'm living, brother. I'm living. And without fear. Like, all these people, like my mom is so scared. Everything, oh, be careful, watch out. It's like a ship is meant to be sailed. Like, if you leave your ship in the damn dock, there could be a storm and your ship sinks while it's sitting there. You see what I'm saying?
It's hard. Sometimes it's hard for people to break the cycle of their families, though, isn't it? Some people fall into the same mistakes that their parents fell into
all the time.
But you've got that free spirit where you've trodden a very independent path.
Yeah, but I paid the price for it.
Sure.
Heavy.
Sure.
Heavy. And I still do to this day, but that's okay. I'm willing to.
Yeah.
You got to pay to play. It's what it is. But yes, you're right. And it's a shame because, again, like a lot of parents, they love their kids. It's not that they don't love their kid. They love them, but they just don't know. And they're scared too. And they've led pretty bleak lives, a lot of them, you know?
So you're this recovering drummer in San Francisco, and then you go to a boxing gym. Is that right?
I mean, in a way. I mean, in a way.
I'm using clip notes.
There's a lot there. You know,
Yeah,
I did a lot of jobs, and I worked as a bouncer.
Sure.
And I also went on the road with a band called the Dwarves, who was like this crazy punk rock band. Like, you can see me for a split second in the movie Kurt and Courtney about Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love, because Kurt Cobain, one of his favorite bands was the Dwarves. And they used to basically play for about 15 minutes, and then the whole place would turn into a massive brawl. They'd start a big brawl with the audience, and they started getting a little older, and so they really couldn't defend themselves, and they had a lot of enemies around America. So they were like, let's take Dave on tour, because they knew I was down for anything. You know, I was basically the mayor of my area. You know, there was a street up there, Fillmore Street, the Lower Haight, between Fillmore and Steiner, right next to the Webster Street projects. Like, dude, so much went down over there, and I was like the mayor of that. I was always up there, like that was my scene, and so I had this reputation, and I was still very aggressive. I was still very aggressive at the time, but I was also working on myself. And I realized that, like, this behavior is not getting me anywhere good. I need to go to a gym and focus this where I really have always wanted to do it, and that's in the boxing gym proper. But at that time, I'd also been smoking cigarettes a long time, and I'd done a lot of abuse to my body. So at that point, I knew I was never going to be like a great fighter. I was a good fighter. But I'm not, you know what I mean? I never like to train. I like to fight.
Sure. You did mention the hair going back then. You said that last haircut was 1988. How did you wear your hair before you started to grow it?
Oh, many different ways. But right before that,
yeah,
it was cropped all the way down all the way down.
Was it? Yeah. What, like grade 1?
It was all the way down, brother. Yeah.
So it's a big difference then. So is the hair a metaphor?
You could look at it like that. I mean, I think the hair to me feels right. It always has. And the moment it doesn't is the moment I'll cut it. So to me, it's not about the hair, but it just feels right. It always did. Like there was something literally in me that was like, I do not want to cut my hair. And I just didn't. And that was it. And I have not done it once since.
You feel it's part of your identity now?
I'm so much more than that. I mean, I think for a lot of people,
for first
yes.
glances, though, yeah. I mean, yeah.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, I don't even know how long my hair is, but probably 5 feet long. Of course. It's very, you know, it's funny. When I walk with people that I don't normally hang out with, they're like, dude, everyone's looking at you. Like, you know, when I walk by, like people look. I don't notice it because I'm me. So it's like that for me every day. And I don't even really think about it.
Yeah.
But I think people do. I think it shows something. I think it's very majestic in a way, like a lion's mane, or like Samson, or like, you know, it shows a lot of, if you want to say, stick-to-itiveness or stubbornness or whatever. But I think that there's a lot to it on a spiritual level and on many different levels.
Is it ever like a logistical nuisance?
Not too much.
No.
I mean, for me, like I said, I love water sports. So I like to dive. I go scuba diving all over the world. That's a pain in the ass. With scuba diving, I got to watch my hair, you know, watch out where it goes and stuff like that. If I skydive, I got to put it, you know, somewhere, stuff like that. But I mean, I live with it. So I'm pretty used to it. Yeah, I'm pretty used to it.
You did mention there, one last one on that, by the way. You did mention if one day you wake up and want to get rid of it, you'll just get rid of it.
Done. Gone. Yeah.
Do you envisage that day?
I don't really.
Have you had those where you think, today could be the day?
No, I don't really future trip like that.
No.
I'm not really worried about it. to be honest with you. I'm really not. I feel like there's just, there's a lot more to me, man.
And you mentioned a sponsor. Did you go to meetings, and do you still go to meetings?
Yes, I did. Yes. And sometimes, but like I haven't been in years.
Did you get anything out of them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Saved my life.
Okay.
They saved my life. This is the thing. I feel like people constantly throw the baby out with the bathwater. They do that a lot with boxing. They'll see like a bad decision and they're, oh, I'm not watching this sport anymore. Or there'll be like a bad match. Oh, I'm not watching this sport anymore. Well, go ahead. Leave. You know? But the thing is, you're missing those great matches that happen. Because there is a lot of garbage out there, but there's a lot of great stuff. Same with the meetings. You'll go to some meetings and you'll hear nothing but garbage. So go to another one. Go to a different one and keep going. You will hear something that connects. Use that. Go to another one. Get a phone number. So these people that are struggling with alcohol abuse and drug abuse, there's a way out of this. And the thing that resonates so deeply with the meetings is that it's people that have gone through it. So it's not some guy that read in a textbook, well, this is what you do. No, it's someone that's been there. You know, they'll tell you, I shot heroin in my eyeball. You know, like, damn, I thought I was bad. You know what I mean? Like, you'll hear some really rugged stories.
Yeah, sure, I can imagine.
I mean, rugged stories.
Yeah.
And you're like, damn. And not only that, you'll see people coming in the rooms and it reminds you like, whoa, I don't want to be there. We keep what we have by giving it away. So it's like, I'm always helping other people, talking to different people, and it helps me too.
Sure.
It's a lovely, lovely cycle, and there's no money involved. And a lot of people are turned off by the God thing, but it's really like, it's basically like this. I was talking with a buddy. Yes, I was hanging out with this guy Ray Gans. He was in the Clash movie, Rude Boy, and he's a buddy of mine. So I went to go visit him yesterday, and we were talking about it, this exact thing, and he said, and I love what he said. It's exactly true. He's like, you know, it's like if you were out there, because we were right on the ocean, or at the English Channel. He said, you know, it's like if you were out there drowning and someone pulled up in a boat and said, come on, get on, mate. And you said, nah, it's yellow. It's a yellow boat. I can't get on that. It's like, dude, if you're drowning, this is to save your life. This is to save your life. Yeah, it works, man. It works. And I'm going to tell you this, another major thing about me that's changed who I am, and really it's a very big part of my life, is that I told you about the travel. I like to travel, but I'd never been able to do it. When I finally was able to put together some money, you know, I had about 10 grand and I thought I was rich because I'd never had that much money in my life. I gave 3 grand to my girlfriend to pay my rent while I was gone. I bought an around the world ticket. It was around $1,700. I bought a Eurail pass that was around $800, and I went and I left for a year, and I went all around the world. I started in Holland, then England, France, Spain, Portugal, Luxembourg, Belgium, Czech Republic, Hungary, Austria. I went to Italy, all the way down to Sicily. I went to Greece, up to Turkey. I went down to Morocco. I went all down through France and Carcassonne and Toulouse. I went through so many places. Then from Athens, I flew down to Cairo. I went all through Egypt, down through the Sinai Peninsula, then up through the Middle East. Took a boat from Nuweiba across the Red Sea to Jordan. Traveled all through Jordan. Actually went into Saudi for a bit. Then I went into Jordan. Went all the way up Jordan. Then back down. Crossed over into the West Bank. Went through Palestine. Then I went to Jerusalem. I hitchhiked to Jerusalem. Stayed in Jerusalem. Then I went out to the Dead Sea to En Gedi. Then I went back through the Gaza Strip, down through the Suez Canal, back to Cairo. I flew to India. Then I traveled through India. Then I went up to Nepal, Kathmandu. Then I traveled up to Tibet. Traveled through Tibet, got detained and kicked out of Tibet, actually. Went back to Kathmandu, then flew back to India, but this time to the other side of India, to Calcutta. Traveled that region. Then I flew over to Southeast Asia, traveled to Southeast Asia, then over to China. And by the time I came home, so I came home after China, my girlfriend called and she was like, listen, you got to come home. So I came home, but Tris, my mind was blown. You see, I was a different person. And I had learned a lot about the world. And at that point, money became very important to me, not for what it could buy me, but for travel. I realized I could travel more. So I started working, and then I never stopped. And I was 24 when I left on that trip, okay? I'm 49 now. So it was 25 years ago. So for 25 years, I've been constantly traveling. and I'm a big motorcycle rider. So what I'll do is I'll go to these countries and I'll buy a motorcycle and I'll travel through. So like I just rode through India up to Pakistan. I just rode through Sri Lanka. I just did Haiti. I did Colombia. I did El Salvador. I did Honduras. I did Ethiopia. I did Somalia. I did Myanmar. I just went. I just did a Vietnam through Cambodia trip. I did Laos. So I've been all over the world, just traveling.
Have you got an absolute highlight out of that lot?
I mean,
Is
I'm going to write a book.
Have you had one of those, not like an epiphany, I suppose like an epiphany, something where you've had a real clarity? Like, so, you know, we mentioned divorce, you know, just at the start there before we started recording. I remember I had an epiphany in North Cyprus when I was getting over that divorce, and my mindset changed in an instant about. It was to do with being able to control the controllables and neglecting the things that you can't control, for me. And so I always remember that bit of clarity and where I was at the time. Have you ever had anything like that, or is traveling part of the process that you go to get the contentment that you find today?
So, interesting questions. I would say too many to list, like too many. It's like literally there have been lifetimes inside of my lifetime. I feel like I've lived many, many lives. I feel very blessed. I feel very fortunate. I have definitely lived a life less traveled. And I've done so many different things. And I've been in a lot of different circles over the years. And been in so many different countries, so many times. I have so many great friends all over the world, man. All over the world. From Chile to Uruguay to Sri Lanka to it just does all over. Singapore, everywhere. Korea, you know, Philippines, everywhere, man. All through Africa. It's just, there's so many things that have happened. I mean, I've been locked up in Egypt, been detained in Tibet, got shot in Colombia. I've been through a lot of stuff. I've seen a lot of stuff. I've seen a lot of people killed, unfortunately, a lot. Seen a lot of violence. And I've had countless nights where I meet wonderful, wonderful people from the far reaches of the globe, and we talk and we have deep spiritual conversations. And so I've had many of these epiphanies. And there's so many times on a motorcycle where you're by yourself for could be weeks at a time, just listening to the hum, but you're seeing amazing things and you're experiencing and meeting very humble, beautiful people. And yeah, there's been a lot, man. It's too many to.
Is there anything you haven't seen that you want to see? Have you got a bucket list?
Yeah, but I've basically
I've been picking them off.
Well, I mean, I've just shot them all down. The one main thing on my bucket list that I have not done is have a child. Okay. And I think that's coming pretty soon. So that's the one thing that I haven't done. But as far as where I want to go, like there's a couple places I'd like to go check out, but it's nothing I haven't seen or, you know.
Well, there's no landmark. There's no.
No, I've done all that.
Natural, okay, you know, it's nothing. No,
I've done all that. Okay. So it's like these people are like, you know, I see these. That's why I'll tell you this 2020 with this coronavirus, you know, the last few years. So now, as you know, I'm a compere, an MC, and I travel around the world with Matchroom Boxing doing these fights. The last few years, we have been, I couldn't tell you how many flights I've taken, but we've done fights from Saudi to Monaco to Italy to Spain to Germany, all through the UK. I mean, Nottingham, Birmingham, Sheffield, Liverpool, Newcastle, all through London. I mean, all over the UK, all through the United States, Mexico. And it's basically almost every week. So I've just been in different cities every week, which is great. I'm used to that. I'm used to a lot of travel. Like I said, I have friends all over in all these places, so I can go see everyone, and it's great. But my head's spinning sometimes because I'm just traveling so much. There's just so much happening. So when 2020 hit, you know, it started out like, boom, I was in Manchester, then I flew to Texas, then I flew back to England, we did a fight in London, then I flew back to Florida, we did a fight in Miami, then I came back, and me and my girl, we went down to West Palm Beach to this beautiful resort just to cool out, and we were cooling out, and all of a sudden Corona hit, we were like, oh man, so we went back to New York, and then we were camped out. For the first few months of the virus, we just camped out. Not camped out, but locked down. That's what I meant when I said camped out. So we camped out in New York at our house, and it's like, it was great for me because like I could actually like do things I needed to do at home. I could I could relax. I started writing my book. It was a really great thing. I used it at the time really, really well. And I really like working out and eating healthy. And it's really hard to eat healthy on the road. As you saw when you just came here, I've got this like 20 ingredient like shake that I make every morning. So I'm really into trying to stay healthy because I really did abuse my body very, very hard for a lot of years. So I'm trying to make up for it. And my last bastion, my last holdout is my cigars, which I really love. So I still want to smoke my cigars. So I try to, this is the one thing that I do that's probably not the healthiest. Although I will say, I really believe it's like I have a way that I can go from a super high stress situation and like break it down and be very calm. And this is one of those great things. When I started, for those that don't know, I had a cigar lounge for 10 years in New York City. And I also own my own cigar brand. This is one of my cigars. So, but one of my slogans for it was conversation, contemplation, celebration. And those are 3 great reasons to smoke a cigar, and especially that contemplation. When I get home at the end of a day, after a long day of doing a lot of stuff, I sit back, clip a cigar, light it, and I relax. And I don't rush it. I don't rush my cigar. I sit, I savor it, and I don't inhale. I don't bring smoke in my lungs anymore. It's just for taste. But I find it very relaxing. So I really do enjoy it. So I'm holding on to this for now.
Do you know Richard Sloan, the fight artist? He does all the big fight posters for, the big fights in Vegas and stuff. Does
oh, yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Big cigar guy.
Nice.
Good guy to look up if you're in Vegas and want to go and get some good company with a cigar.
There you go.
So the boxing thing, obviously we've touched upon some travel and some background stuff, but how did you become one of the go-to ring announcers in the world today?
Excuse me?
What was the first...
Excuse me? I'm joking.
I've got a couple of friends, Michael and Jimmy, that might disagree.
I'm joking. They're good friends of mine too, by the way. They're great guys.
Yeah. What's the first step? What was your first step into ring announcing?
Well, it's a great question. I get asked this a lot, and I'll be totally honest how it happened. I loved the sport. I wanted to be in the sport, and I just remembered I didn't answer one of your questions before. Who do I look up to back in the day? I loved Evel Knievel. I loved the Fonz from Happy Days. I loved Pele for some reason.
Yeah.
Those were some of the guys. So the motorcycles, the craziness. But I loved Sugar Ray Leonard. He was one of those guys. Okay, because he was living in the D.C. area. He lived in Maryland. So I used to live in Bowie, and I lived very close to where he was from, and I loved Sugar Ray Leonard. To this day I do, and now I'm friends with him. I got to work with him, which is like amazing. But not that I idolized him, but he was just like my favorite fighter. Out of all the years of watching boxing, I've seen clips of Sugar Ray Robinson. I was not alive when he was fighting, or I never got to see his fights live, so I don't know. He looks great in the film and the stuff I've read about him, but live, for what I saw, Sugar Ray Leonard was the man, because first of all, he took all comers. He could box, he could slug, he had speed, he just had everything, and I loved him. So going back to that in the boxing, how did it start? I loved boxing. Did the boxing, knew I wasn't going to be a great fighter. One of the gyms I used to train out at King's Gym in East Oakland. Then I went to a gym called Grinelli's, and I started training at S&S. I started training at all these different gyms. But I wanted to find my niche in the sport. And I was in the clubs, I was DJing, and I was always good on the mic. Okay, people always told me I had a great voice. My grandmother used to tell me. And in 1988, I actually started DJing at a radio station in the DC area. So I had the skills to be on the mic and to DJ and to all that stuff. Now, at the time, I was making real money in the clubs. I was doing really, really well. So I didn't need money, but I wanted to stay in boxing. And I thought to myself, Tris, one day I was thinking, what's the best job ever? What's the just the best job? What's a dream job? Everyone's like astronaut. And it's funny, as a kid, this always really upset my mom. I always wanted to be a garbage man. That's the true story. because they got to hang on the back of the truck. They're hanging out with their buddies, and you throw stuff and you crush stuff. And I thought it was cool. And my mom was, no. For all the bin men out there, like, hey, big up, man. I never got to do it. You're living the dream, man. I never got to do it, but that's always what I wanted to do. But I thought at that point, I said, what's the best job? And I thought, being a ring announcer. is the very best. And you spend a lot of time in AC, so you know a guy like Ed Darian. That was my favorite ring announcer of all time. He was classic for the AC fights. This young man comes to us all the way from Philadelphia. It's like right down the road, all the way. There's not all the way. It's from right next door, but I just love the guy, you know. And he was my favorite ring announcer. And I thought that's just a great gig, man. You're at the fights, you get the decision before anyone else does, so they can hang on that last word and the winner
if you do it right
by split decision. You know, I mean, that's the best, right? And so I thought, you know, God, that would be amazing. And I knew so much about boxing, and I had done it, and I knew a lot of fighters. I said, I'm going to do it. So I went to a gym, and I went in there one day, and I kind of looked a little bit thuggy. I wasn't dressed particularly nice. And I said, who's the boss here, whatever? And the guy came, and I went up, and I said, I'm an announcer. You should hire me. And the guy was looking at me like, who's this guy? And he was like, well, write down your name and your number. Maybe I'll call you. He never called. A few months later, he called. And he answered, and he said, is this David Diamante? I said, yeah, this is him. Who's this? He told me, he's like, are you still an announcer? I said, yes. Well, yes, actually, I am. Sure. And he said, all right, I got a fight for you. I want you to come down. I want to talk to you. This time I cleaned up a little bit. I went down there. Never done a fight in my life. Told me about the fight. The first fight was at the Church Street Boxing Gym, okay, in New York City. It was in a basement. That basement, if anyone that ever trained at that gym, it was a very famous gym. It was downstairs, and it had a huge basement. It was like a double level. There was like a balcony. So I will never forget this. My first fight I ever did, I go there, and my girlfriend at the time, her name was Dallas, and we went out for 8.5 years. Really wonderful woman. We're still very close to this day. So Dallas got there first, and she was in the back. So I walked back there, and she sees me, and she goes, there's a lot of people out there. She was really nervous. And I was like, yeah, that's great. She's like, no, but I mean, do you know what you're doing? And I was like, yeah, I'll be fine. And I did the fight, and the guy came up to me afterwards, and he says, you're my guy. He loved me. And that was it. And I started doing all these amateur fights, and Did
you think you'd nailed it?
Well, when you say nailed it, I think it's like fighting. Like there's a lot of levels to it, right? Like you have good you have good, you know, novice fighters, then you get the open class, then you get the
not screwed up though.
You know, I did a fine job.
Yeah.
I did a fine job, but I mean, it wasn't where I am today. Sure. But I did the amateurs for years. And Tris, to be really honest with you, I never made any money doing it. It was all, so you don't get paid to do the amateurs. Yeah, it was volunteer. Yeah, it was all volunteer work. I did it for years. And I never even thought that it would turn into something big. I just loved to be a part of the sport. I wanted to remain a part of the sport. I was still training. I was still a part of a lot of the gyms. I knew a lot of the guys. And all these fighters that you see now, these Paulie Malignaggi's, these Danny Jacobs, these Will Rosinskis, these Saddam Ali's, all these New York fighters, and a lot of fighters from other places like Dusty Hernandez Harrison that was going to fight Demetrius Andrade before that fight fell through. I did his fight when he was 8 years old in the street in the Bronx. You know, him and his dad, I known those guys forever, since he was 8 years old. So what happens is you build relationships, right? And so it wasn't just about the fighters and their families. It was about them for sure, but it was about the trainers, the referees, the cutmen, the timekeeper, the guy that sets up the ring. We were like a family.
Sure.
Because we're all doing it for the right reasons. Nobody getting paid. No, ain't nobody getting paid. We did it because we loved it. And you'll see some of these top referees in the world, like the Steve Willises and the Eddie Claudios and the Ricky Gonzalez's and all these guys. Like we all came up together, you know, and guys like Vince Shomo and Danny Gant and God, there's so many great guys that taught us that stuff, you know, and just really wonderful stuff. And Arthur Mercanti, and I mean, all these guys, they were a part of our life.
Did you play around with different catchphrases?
I did. Yeah, I did one. I kind of always hated the catchphrase because to me, it's like when you say like, is the hair your identity? Like people think I grew the hair to like be
a character.
Yeah, but it's not like that. It's who I am.
Sure.
Now I've realized it doesn't hurt. Like the New York Post did an article and they said Don King they said Donald Trump has his comb over, Don King has his, you know, thing, and David Diamante's got his dreads, and there was a big article about me, and that was years ago, before Trump was president. But people do identify with that, right? Like even for a guy like Michael to be like, yeah, the Rumble guy. Like a lot of people don't know his name.
Sure.
Or with me, they won't know my name. They'll say the Dread guy. You know, that's how people identify you, right?
Sure.
It's, you know, I hear people calling Floyd Mayweather Floyd Merriweather. You know, people don't, you know, sometimes people don't pay attention, but they do see that stuff. So I think that that's definitely one of the things. But I did come up with I used to say it's now time to witness the sweet science of knockoutology. I came up with all kinds of different things. The one thing that I've always stuck with that I'm really proud of, that I really love, is from the four corners of the world to the four corners of this ring. And I love it because one of the things I love about boxing is it's a worldwide sport. You know, I spend a lot of time overseas, as you know. And when you talk to people that are not Americans and you say, oh, Major League Baseball, and they're like, well, the World Series is just American. It's not the World Series. Or when an NBA champ team becomes the world champions, they're like, well, they're not a world team. It's an American league. And they have a point there. Now, there are players from all over the world in those leagues, but either way, I understand their point. Boxing, like football, or like soccer, is a world sport. And I love that boxing is a world sport. And when we do these fights, like, for example, the fight that's coming up for example, any of the fights we do, right? Any of the fights we do are on a very high level at this point in the game. So people from all over the world are watching these fights. So, and obviously it's a proverbial thing to say the four corners, right? So the four corners of the world, and the ring does have four corners. So for me, it's like it brings the world to that one spot. Yeah. That's where we're focused on. And the fight starts now. And I like love it because it gets me hyped, man. So this is what we've waited for, brother. This is it. There's been so much talk. There's so much this. You know, my little brother, God bless him, my little brother who's in his 40s, you know, he's not little anymore. But when he was a little kid, he used to ask my dad, can a hockey man beat up a policeman? Can a shark beat up like he was always very fascinated with who was the toughest. Sure. I think we all were, right? And that's what boxing comes down to. And when you get two freight trains going head to head and you don't see a give in either of them and both believe, you see, belief is a big thing. Purpose and belief is stronger than anything. Like, I feel like Superman. I can't be stopped. I feel like that. I really do. And also, I feel like a man with a pure heart has the strength of 10 men. And I feel like that because I'm not out to hurt anyone. I have pure intentions, and I know that. So that's why when I go to these places and I get into a lot of dangerous situations, I'm not worried about it. And it's happened. It's happened. Believe me, it's happened. You know, I could tell you some of these stories, but I don't want to sit here and go through all that. But it's when it does happen, I rise. I always rise because it's in me. And boxing at its purest, again, there's a lot of garbage, admittedly. And there's a lot of bad things that happen in our sport. And there's a lot of politics and there's a lot of, you know, divisiveness and stuff like that. And people don't get along, and the promoters and the networks and the sanctioning bodies, and there's too many belts and just so many different things, and the best don't fight the best sometimes. And there's a lot of things that we get upset about. But when it happens, best thing in the world. Best thing in the world, hands down. There's nothing like it.
So when you say from the four corners of the earth to the four corners
of the world.
Four corners of the world. Sorry, you'll see where I was going with that. You're not actually saying that the earth's flat. Have you had that debate?
Carl.
Have you had that debate with
Carl
Froch
out there?
That's not what you're getting at.
That's not what I'm getting at. No.
When did the Fight Starts Now actually start for you? Do you know? Can you pinpoint the first show?
No, but it was a lot of years ago. I don't remember.
And the doubling up of the surname, have you always done that?
Yes, I've done that since the very beginning.
Since the amateurs?
Amateurs. Yeah. If you see fights of me 15 years ago, you'll see me saying, like, you know, Smith. I've always done the double surname, yeah.
And that's a nod to the great ring announcers of the past.
It's out of respect for the tradition of the sport, to the nod to the great ring announcers of the past. And I also really love the fact, you know, I feel like these fighters, you know, they're different, right? Fighters are different than footballers or baseball players or all these players. These guys are really putting their lives on the line. And, you know, your health is at risk for sure when you go into fights. And even if you win a fight, people don't realize, you know, you don't walk through the rain and not get wet, okay? You're going to get hit. Guys that win the fights, look at CompuBox numbers. Guys get tapped up. Bad. Winners get tapped up. They eat a lot of shots. And Boxing's the one sport, you look at soccer or football, whatever, a guy, gets a little clip and he falls down, and in an NBA, a guy gets hit in the face and he's down on the floor. Boxing's the one sport where guys say, no, you didn't hurt me. You see it all the time. Guys get nailed with this shit, you're like, ooh, and you see him go, nah. No means yes, right? No means yes, always. When a guy gets hit and he says, nah, that didn't hurt, of course it hurt. But it's like poker. I like to play cards. It's like poker. You can't show that. It's the one sport where you act like you're not hurt. It's amazing. So I have so much respect for the fighters, and I'm really in awe a lot of times. I'm going to still go around before I answer and tell you why. Another reason of why I do the double surname. I've seen guys, and I don't want to name names, but do things that are just miserable. Like, over 100-degree heat. They know they're a little bit overweight, wearing a rubber suit, laying outside, doing a workout, and just trying to just sweat out. It's just like I'm out there in a shirt and t-shirt and shorts, and I can't breathe. And these guys are in a rubber suit with blankets on them. I mean, fighters do some really hardcore stuff. People don't realize that. It's not just about the fight, but it's about the training regimen and the diet. And there's so much that these guys go through. It's really hard. It's really hard. And just that walk to the ring, God, to know that you're going in there, mano a mano. There's no one. The ring is where the truth comes out, always. You can sit there and be, I had the best camp ever. Oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and blah, 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 XYZ, blah, blah, blah. No. When the bell rings, we find out how your training went. We'll find out what you're made of. We find out what's beating beneath your chest. You can't hide in the ring, okay? And that's what I love about it so much. So these fighters, that walk to the ring to face another man that's the same weight, there's no sucker punches. He knows what's coming. Okay. And it's like, I just have the utmost respect. And so when I do the double surname, the first time I say, Tris Dixon, and everyone's, the second time, Dixon, like you remember it. Do you know what I mean? It like sticks through. And I think fighters deserve to have their name said a second time. The crowd
will stop booing me by the time you said my name the first time, so you can hear it the second time.
Right.
That reminds me, actually, going back to that first show where you said about Dallas going with you downstairs to Church Street Gym. Then and now, any pre-fight anxiety your end for going out and doing what you do? Because someone like me couldn't do that. I'd be a nervous wreck. Going out there, I'd be shaking like a leaf in front of, 500 people, 50,000 people. Like, do you just go out there and literally just thrive off it?
I thrive off it. I feel very comfortable behind a microphone.
It's absolutely mental to hear.
Yeah.
That you would go there. So so say we put a heart rate monitor on you.
Yeah.
How high do you think it would go? Do you think you'd be just normal?
Yeah, I have a way of the higher the moment, the more calm I feel. Are we not living in an artificial economy here where you've replaced one set of buzzes for like a buzz that you can't replicate with any substance? Well, that's the thing. Like I said, I'm still getting high every day.
Yeah.
Higher than any drug. Believe that. I've been on all those drugs. I know where they take you. This is way higher than that. It's way higher than that. I mean, I was an NBA announcer for 6 years.
Yeah, with
I was the voice of the Brooklyn Nets for the NBA. Jay-Z chose me to be the voice of that team. And obviously being a huge honor, being a Brooklynite, my mom used to tell me how the Dodgers left in the 50s and it was this terrible day for Brooklyn and there was no professional sports team. The city fell into a doldrums, always playing second fiddle to Manhattan, and for them to come back and to be able to be the really just to carry the flag for my borough. Fucking hell. It was amazing. The pressure of every game of that first season, first game against the Knicks. First of all, first game at the Barclays Center ever, okay? Like, everybody's there. Everybody's there. Like, everybody.
And you're going to say the first words that they hear.
Everything. I did the very first fight at Barclays Center. But the first game against the Knicks, and then we hit the playoffs, so it's like, I'm calling the playoffs, and this game's on Christmas on ESPN, like it's being watched by how many millions of people around the world. Let's roll, baby. This is why I'm here, right? This is why I'm here. Do what got you there. Do what got you there. You're there for a reason because you're good. And it's like, you just got to keep it a buck. You got to keep it 100. You got to you got to stay true to who you are. If you're doing what you love, then you're in your lane. Like, I know boxing. I know what I'm doing. I feel it. Like, I feel it as much as that person in the front row or up in the nosebleeds. I feel it because I'm a fan too. So, and if I ever get nervous, I just remember that those guys in the corner, they're about to get punched. I get to walk out of the ring. So that kind of calms my nerves too.
We talked about, obviously, in the ring, fighters put an awful lot on the line, and sometimes they make mistakes, and that makes them better down the line generally. To get to where you're at, have you made plenty of mistakes?
Yeah, of course. We all make mistakes, but there's certain levels to it. I've never made like massive gaffes, but I've made some mistakes, sure. But they're pretty small bobbles. You bobble sometimes. I mean, the thing is sometimes.
Sorry, what's a bobble?
Like when you talk and you say, like, you stutter, or like you trip on a word. You'll say like say a word wrong, but not totally wrong, but like
Okay.
Whatever. Just
you can dig yourself out of that sort of hole.
Yeah, it's just a bobble. I mean, people bobble all the time, right? It's not a major deal, but
do you dread making a howler?
Do I dread making what?
That's an English thing. Do you dread making a mistake, a big one?
No, I don't even think about that. To me, that's
in your prep, isn't there? I've seen those.
Yeah, like, first of all, I prep really well, right? It's like a fighter. I always said that. Fights are not won in the ring. They're won very far away from the ring. They're won in the road work, in the diet, in the sparring, in the mental preparation, in the watching tape, whatever a trainer does. That's when a fight, by the time the fight's the fun part. He gets to do all that stuff, And I learned that when I first started fighting. My trainer, Buddha, he wouldn't even let me hit the bag. Because, like, I got in there, I just wanted to fight. And he's like, whoa, this is not how this works. He had me shadow boxing in a mirror forever. But then I could go to the bag. But, by the time I got to sparring, I was like, oh, that's why. Then I was like, I was thankful for it, right? Because it's not just a tough guy competition. Now you're fighting guys that know what they're doing. So it's just a little bit different, So, no, I don't think about bobbles like that. I prep very well. Look, it happens sometimes. You just move forward, but nothing too major.
Do you practice, like, around this apartment and, like, when you're driving? Do you do it all?
No, I don't. No. I mean, I'll think about the fights and I'll do research on different fighters that I don't know and things like that, but I don't like sit there and practice.
You're not in the shower shouting out people's names.
No. If you talk to the guy upstairs, he hasn't heard that.
Brilliant. How do you, so your job, one of the things that people might not think of, but you've got to appeal to a really broad cross-section of audience, haven't you? Like, you've got to be liked by everyone, really, when you appear in front of them to do what you do, because it's, you've got a diverse cross-section of people in an audience, and you need to reach all of those people. Do you see that?
No, not at all. I don't think about that at all. And I'll tell you why. Because you're never going to please everyone. I don't care who you are. I hear people shit on everyone. People that I think are amazing. And I'm like, how could you criticize them? I mean, someone will put up a video on YouTube like, let's save puppies. And there'll be some dislikes. It's like, how do you dislike that? Like, who disliked this video, right? There's always, you always get those people. And
in the comments, you should have drowned them all.
Right, yeah, who's disliking this video? Be some like little girl saying like, can we raise money for my kindergarten? And some dislike, like, what? How could you dislike that? It doesn't make sense. So you always get people out there, right? And a lot of times, what I do realize is that people are unhappy a lot of times with themselves, and so I more feel compassion for those people. To me, the one thing I don't want them to say is he didn't do a good job, and I never hear that. Because I need to do a bang-up job. If you don't like how I look, I get that. That's cool. I'm not for everybody. I'm not going to be everyone's cup of tea. I'm fine with that. And I've heard stuff about all the announcers. Oh, he's too boring. Oh, he's too flashy. Or, oh, it's that everyone's got something here. I don't like his voice. Oh, I like his voice. I don't like... Some people, they just feel different ways. So you have to do what you think is the right way. Like, I think about what I would want to hear if I'm in the audience, I like always, you got to think about it like the 3 C's of announcing: do it clear, do it concise, and do it correct. It's very, very important. So for me, that's what I want to do. I want to keep it clear, concise, and correct. Make sure I'm very audible. Make sure I know what I'm talking about. And that's really it. But as far as people liking me, that's not, and people do seem to like me. So that's wonderful. And thank you for all the support. I've gotten so many great comments and tweets and all these things. And unfortunately I cannot respond to all of them because I'm running around doing so many things, and there's so many platforms on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. And it's just, I try to, but then like, I just get dragged away and other things happen and I can't do it. But I read your comments and I really appreciate them to all the people out there. So thank you for that.
How difficult has it been to pitch doing these introductions in fight camp and stuff with no crowd?
It's more difficult for sure because, when I told you I was a DJ in 1988 at a radio station, I hated it. And let me tell you why. I'm in a booth.
There's no feedback.
It's not the feedback. There's no interaction. Like there's no energy, no atmosphere. It's whack. I didn't like that. I wasn't with that at all. Live music, loved it. There's an audience. DJing in a club, loved it. There's right there, and it's very much the same thing. Like DJing, let's say, it's like you're juggling. Imagine you're a juggler. If you drop a ball, it's a wrap, kid. It's a wrap. You've messed up. Show's over. If you're DJing a club and it's pumping, okay, we're talking New York City, hot, not a spot on the floor, and you drop the wrong tune or your mix is a train wreck or something happens, dude, everybody is like, what? And looks at you, looks at their watch, yawns. It's over. Like you've dropped the ball. When I'm ring announcing, I look at it as almost like singing. There's a music to it, okay? There's a music. It is speaking, but it's a musical thing. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Where Tonight, Mr. Eddie Hearn of Matchroom Boxing, blah, blah, blah. This bout is sanctioned under the auspices of the British Boxing Board of Control, blah, blah, blah. Introducing your 3 judges scoring this world title contest from ringside. There's a cadence. And so I want to keep that cadence going. It needs to sound pleasant to the ear, not just my voice, having a nice voice, which I know that I do and people say I do and I appreciate all that. But a lot of people have nice voices, but you have to be knowledgeable and you have to be able to kind of sing with your voice to be able to say those things. And I script everything out myself, the way that I say it, the way that I want to put details and florally say something on a fighter. You don't just say tip the scales if he's a featherweight. He didn't tip any scale. But if he's 350 pounds, he's tipping the scales. If he weighed in at a trim and ready, this is trim and ready. Some guys are not so trim and ready, right? And some guys are hard hitters and some guys are not. So there's different things of where I'll say and different ways that I put where his losses are, where his hometown is, or that he's a champion, or some belts are very small, so I'll kind of put those there, but I know that he's going to have a big contingency there, so I'll say fighting out of, London, England, and the crowd goes, you have to think about those things. I think about those things. So there's a lot to it that maybe people don't think about that goes into it. So there's a lot of thought into that type of thing.
How much do you hate watching ring announcers who announce a split decision and they announce the 2 winning cards first?
Well, that's just that's literally abhorrent. That can't happen. That if it's your job, you must know how to. There are a ton of different ways. There are a ton of different decisions, and there's a very specific way to announce each one of them, and you must know that. I mean, that's your job. So that's a no. That's right there. It's a no-go. But saying that, I love all the ring announcers. I think there's a lot of great guys out there. I love what they do. It's a very difficult job for a lot of different reasons. There's a lot of little pitfalls that people don't really think about. So there's a lot of pressure on you, and it's also live. There's no safety net. There's no what's the word? Teleprompter. You're not reading, right? It's all live. So there's no. It's basically like this, Tris. If I told you to walk on a 2x4 from here to there, yeah, no problem. You could do it, right? Easy. Now, if I put that 2x4 between the World Trade Centers, it'd be a little bit different situation. I mean, obviously they're not there anymore, but you understand what I'm saying,
Sure.
So you're up there, and so I have respect for all the announcers. I think they're all great.
During the Showtime and HBO War years, were you team Jimmy or team Michael Buffer?
I'm team Dave Diamante. I mean, I worked for both.
Yeah.
I did a ton of fights for Showtime. I did a ton of fights for HBO. So I love both teams. I love both guys. I know both guys really well. I've worked very closely with both Jimmy and with Michael.
Have they mentored you at all? Have they tried to, or
Not so much mentor. We're more friends.
yeah.
You know, those guys are both wonderful. They really are. I mean, they're amazing guys, and they're class. They're class. They've been around for a long time. They do great jobs. They're just so good at what they do. So their professionalism is something that I've always emulated, but not their styles. You know, I like to have my own style.
Sure.
But what's funny, and like I think there's an interview somewhere out there with Michael and I talking about this, because you know the last few years we've worked very closely together. Before that, I was working with Jimmy very closely, and like we can laugh because things happen to us, little quirks that we know about as ring announcers that like we go through that other people wouldn't even think about, because at the end of the day, of course, it's about the fighters. It's not about us. It's always about the fighters. But the ring announcer does bring a lot to it, and we are the catalyst between everything behind the scenes to what the people see. We are the presenter. So it has to be on point. It has to be on point. It's got to be kept at a very, very high level.
And of course, you're not just doing the ring announcing now. There's a lot of stuff that you do that works hand in hand. So weigh-ins, press conferences, all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
So it's a sort of multifaceted job where you need to
Weigh-ins,
wear different hats.
press conferences, open workouts, interviews, all kinds of different things.
Any outstanding fight weeks that you've experienced, that you've had? I mean, obviously, I know you've done a lot of the WBSS stuff around the globe. Obviously, we're in Saudi. There's loads of different things that come to the top of my head. But I remember the great fight weeks that I've done over the years, and you know, I could probably list 5 or 6 of them. Are there any that instantly come to mind where you think that was just a great time?
I mean, I think, again, there's maybe too many to mention, but a couple, you know, when AJ was in New York at the Garden for the first time, Saudi was incredible. Doing Usyk and Gassiev for the undisputed Cruiserweight Championship of the World in Moscow was unreal. The fights in Sochi were unreal. Dordikos and Gassiev, fuck, what a fight. When, you know, George Groves against Chris Eubank Jr. at the MEN in Manchester was unreal. That was a great fight. Like the whole, there wasn't an empty seat in that arena. I mean, England was clamoring for that fight. There's so much back and forth and jawing, going back and forth. Like everyone wanted to see that. It was a great fight. That was a great week. There's been so many, and then of course all the fights out of the country. Those were obviously out of the United States, but fights down like in world title fights down in Mexico, amazing. Doing fights down in Uruguay, you know, just wonderful times with great people, and yeah, unreal stuff. And I have a lot of friends around the world, so people always take me out for these great dinners, and I go to these cool gyms, and I get to see so many cool things. I'm very, very blessed.
With your music background, are you conflicted when they put on Sweet Caroline?
Listen, man, the crowd loves it, and I love it because it gets everyone in the mood, you know, and I love all kinds of music. So, you know, just to say, speaking of, it's funny when people say, what kind of music do you like, or what kind of music did you play as a DJ or whatever? My answer is very simple: good music. So I like all types of music. I really am very, very eclectic. So, I mean, I listen to classical, and I listen to everything. So it's not just about hardcore music. That was very early. That was, you know, Tris, we jumped through a lot of years and a lot of life stories, without getting into the details of it. But there's been a lot of evolution, a lot of growth on my part. And again, like, I view my adversity as my strength, because without what I went through as a kid, I would not be here with a fire that burns very, very strong in me to this day. Okay. And I believe that. So I have some mates, very close friends of mine that I grew up with, that had wonderful parents that gave them this and gave them that, and they had everything they wanted, and they don't have a pot to piss in now because they can't
Fend for themselves.
They can't fend for themselves. And I was at a very young age kicked out of the nest, and I was very angry about it then, but now I'm very grateful in a lot of ways. So all that stuff I went through, I'm not angry about it. I'm actually very happy about it, because you got to go through hell before you get to heaven, right? That's that. I think that's a line in an Eagle song, actually. Now that I say it, but I think it's very true. You got to go through the fire.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you should say that, because I was going to ask the next question I was going to ask was, I think you were visibly choked up when you announced or had to announce the 10 bells for Patrick Day a couple of years ago. That looked like it was one of the toughest gigs that you've had.
Yeah. That was terrible. It still is terrible. It still hurts me to this day very deeply. I'm extremely upset about it. You know, it was a terrible, terrible thing that happened. And I miss him, and it wasn't right. And, you know, we know that boxing is an inherently dangerous sport. I'm okay with that. You know, I don't like that. It's funny, you know, that's the one thing I don't like about the sport. I don't like seeing guys get hurt. And Tris, I think you'll probably know this working in the sport. I know most of these fighters, and I never root for a fighter because I have to remain neutral, because I'm trying to big up each one of them, and I'm not trying to give either one of them I'm totally Switzerland. I'm not trying to be
Trying to boost one over the other. Sure.
No, if I do it for him, I'm doing it for him, or her for her. So I root for the best man or woman to win, and for them to both stay safe. What I love about the sport is, like I said, I find boxing to be the purest form of finding out what a man is made of, or what a woman is made of. Because again, there's no team, there's no hiding. Like, mixed martial arts, I really enjoy also. I like all combat sports, and I announced MMA for a very long time. But it's by far not my favorite sport. Boxing is my favorite sport. And even though I think MMA is incredibly hard, there's so many times when a guy will like take a kick to the head or whatever, will go down, or a guy will get choked out or something. But with boxing, it seems like more often than not, it can go into the later rounds, to the deeper water, where a guy gets hurt and has to dig deep, and he has to change his game plan, and you're like, God, wow. You know, when you sit ringside and you hear these shots that they take, body shots, head shots, really, really rough stuff. It's very deep water. It's like you ever go swimming in a lake and it's sunny and nice, and then all of a sudden you get into an area that's kind of shadowy, and the water's very cold, and you're far away, and you're like, there could be a snapping turtle or whatever, you know, it's like, it's this dark, deep water. And boxers have to know that place, and they have to be comfortable there. And that's
they want to swim into it rather than go back to the shore.
They have to thrive in that water. They have to thrive in that water. And it's a very scary place to be. That's why I think you see so much difference in the levels of sport, and why matchmaking is one of the key things to the game, is that, yeah, a guy can have all the talent in the world, and he might not fight for shit because he might be scared. He might not be able to deal with his fear. We all have fears, okay? We're human beings. Like, I'm not an idiot. If you don't have fear, you're an idiot. I have fear, but I face my fears, and I know how to do that. So fighters have to know how to do that, and it's a very, very hard thing to do. It's something that takes years, can take years to do that. To be very like a guy like James Toney, who could sit on the ropes and just be like, he's watching TV with his clicker as a guy's trying to take his head off. It's amazing to watch something like that. It's amazing. Guys just looks like he's eating a ham sandwich, and he's like, you know, it's that does not happen overnight. So going back to Patrick, that was a terrible, terrible thing. And as I was saying, the sport is inherently dangerous. These men and women that are in the sport, they're adults. They know what they're doing. I get it. People are going to get hurt. I understand that. But people should be at the ready to help these fighters. The referees when a guy cannot defend himself, or a woman cannot defend herself, the ref needs to stop the fight, and they need to be in position, because it takes a split second for someone's life to change. Okay? That's it. One extra punch when you can't really defend yourself. People don't realize, because they see guys take so many punches, they think, oh, it's one punch. They take that all the time. It's very different when you see it coming, when you can take a little mustard off by slipping or going with it or rolling or bracing. It's very different than if you just can't and you're taking it. These guys will hurt you. They will hurt you. And refs have to be in position. EMTs have to be at the ready with oxygen. They got to be ready to take fighters to the hospital if they need to, because it is a very it's an inherently dangerous sport, and I don't think that's going to change. And again, I'm okay with that. And I like to see a spectacular knockout like we all do, but that's not why I watch the sport. I watch to find out what's beaten beneath your chest. That's what intrigues me the most about this sport. It really does. That's why I like a fight. We got AJ this weekend against Kubrat Pulev, which is not a foregone conclusion. No fight in the heavyweight division is a foregone conclusion. But his fight against Andy Ruiz, most people didn't know who he was during going into the first fight. Of course, I did. I'm sure that you did too. We know Andy Ruiz is a fine fighter. He's very, very tough. And going into the second fight, AJ did what he had to do, but that's very tough to go face your demons. And people don't realize, most people when they go to work, they get their boss. Maybe there's a couple people in the office seeing what they do. When I go to work, millions of people are seeing it. When fighters go to work, millions of people are seeing it. So if you make a mistake, it's in front of millions of people, and it's very different. And you ask a guy about Bill Buckner, about making a mistake in public. I mean, you can have an incredible career. You make one big gaffe or whatever, and that's what you're known for. So,
especially in today's day and age with social media and video
absolutely,
and all the rest of it.
But even not Bill Buckner was before social media, but or Tommy Lasorda getting thrown down by Pedro Martinez. And these are all baseball situations for people that don't know that. But these guys had storied careers, and they're known for these. Not Tommy Lasorda, Don Zimmer. Tommy Lasorda was down the third base line, playing third base coach just for fun, and he went ass over tea kettle, and people remember him for that. And it's this guy was incredible, but that's what they remember.
Do you have a favorite atmosphere that you've announced in front of?
There's so many, man. I mean, the Garden's amazing, York Hall's amazing, Manchester's amazing, Liverpool's amazing, Newcastle, amazing.
Ritson fights.
They're just great. They're just great. Tune. There's a lot. But I think, Mexico, the great fights in Mexico. It's really where the crowd is just into it. And, what I believe makes a lot of great fights, besides great fighters and guys, with the will to win and even matches, is when people know their stories. People care. They feel invested, right? It's like if you watch a movie, there could be the biggest explosions in this, but if you don't really identify with the characters in it, whether you love them or hate them, it doesn't really matter so much. And that's why guys like Floyd Mayweather and Mike Tyson, they're amazing because they transcend the sport in a way that people care about them. Whether, there's people that love Floyd Mayweather and there's people that hate Floyd Mayweather, but either way, they know him and they care about him. Either they don't like him or they love him. So they want to see him win, they want to see him lose. Either way, they want to see him. And so that's what makes these exciting events.
If you were going to put some fights on YouTube to watch, because you talked about the sort of fights that you like, what would you put on?
I probably put on just older stuff, guys that I want to learn more about from back in the day. But, you're talking a lot about Matthew Saad Muhammad and Dwight Muhammad Cowie and Eddie Mustafa Muhammad. All those guys from back in the day were amazing.
There were you talk about Sam Langford as well, so you go right back on with some of the stuff that you like and some of the fighters you admire.
Well, if you look at what these guys have done over the years, and again, I wasn't around to see that, so I have to YouTube or read about these fights. Willie Pep, Sam Langford, Jack Johnson, Sugar Ray Robinson, the divisions they jumped up, the guys they fought, the amount of fights they had, Carmen Basilio, God, great fights. We live in such a great day and age. Another thing, I told you how I lived in the country, even though it wasn't the country, but it was very close to the city, but it felt very country. So I have the best of both. I love how old I am because when I grew up, we didn't have YouTube. We didn't have the internet. We had a card catalog and we had encyclopedias that we never had the full set ever. There was always tons missing, and they were always outdated. So, I was always thirsty for knowledge. And nowadays, it's amazing to be able to get on and just do the research. And I don't know if people really realize how fortunate they are. So use that. It's just a great tool.
Definitely. Are you a big reader?
Huge. Yeah, I read a lot.
What was the last book you read?
Oh, man.
I'll put you on the spot.
No, it's okay. I read a lot of different books. So, and they vary Like I read The Great Yacht Race by Anthony Winkler, Jamaican novel, really great novel. But then I read a lot of books, spiritual books, health books about diet, about stuff like that. I'm really pretty strict with my diet, and then I'm not. So like usually half of the day I eat incredibly clean, and then at night I want to be able to do it, have a steak or whatever, So I kind of look at like that. That's the balance. So. Yeah. I do a lot of research with that, and I read a lot of articles also, but I'm a huge reader. I never stop reading.
Do you still have the cigar lounge?
So I closed it.
The one in Brooklyn?
I closed it. I had it for 10 years. Lease was up. COVID hit. I said, this is a good time. Let's close it. I have plans to open a new spot in Manhattan. It'll probably be a bar that will sell cigars, but probably will not be a cigar bar. It'll probably be a regular bar. I have to wait to see what happens with COVID, but there are plans to do that. So waiting by the sidelines.
Yeah, okay. And how would you get better? Because obviously people talk about fighters and trainers, always learning and stuff. In your work, what you do is do you have to repeat what you do just on loop, or how can you take it to the next level? Are you happy just doing what you know?
No, I'm always trying to get better. Yeah. Always. If you're not, then it's like with music, I don't care who you are. If you're Lionel Hampton or, Ginger Baker, you can always learn, right? Music never stops. And the same with being a performer, being a singer, being a ring announcer, being a fighter. The moment you think you know it all, you're dead in the water. So I'm always trying to get better. I would always bring my girlfriend to fights and to my game. And afterwards I tell her, don't tell me what I did good. I don't want to hear that. Tell me what I did wrong. I don't care if it was the smallest thing. Tell me what I did wrong. And so I'll nitpick. I'm extremely hard on myself. But I love to watch my performances back. Not all the time, but very rarely actually nowadays. So I just don't have time. But I'll try to, if I can, to see, was that good? Did that work? Did that sound correct? What was the reaction to the crowd on that? Things like that. But really, like, you kind of know what you're doing because nowadays, no, because there's no crowd. But when you have live audiences, you can tell if something falls flat or if something hits. But I'm always trying to get better, absolutely, and everything with the way I dress and my knowledge, my research, everything, very important.
Do you sometimes wonder how different your life would be had you not taken the sober path?
Well, I wouldn't be here. I have no doubt about it. Well, definitely I wouldn't be here, but I very probably would not be alive. I mean, I can almost.
Do you allow yourself to think about what might have been if you'd stayed in music full time, if you'd not sobered up and everything?
Well, one of the things with me is evolution. I think it's very big. So I can look at a lot of correlations with people that like I've looked up to, guys like a Malcolm X. He grew up kind of as a thug, and then he learned different things throughout his life, and he changed, and he ended up paying the ultimate price for it. He was assassinated for it and killed. Fighters, they must evolve too. You can have a fighter that's a great fighter, or very strong, good fighter, not great fighter, good fighter. But if he doesn't change and evolve, he will not be a great fighter. You have to adapt, and you have to be able to adapt to all situations. Bruce Lee said, be like water. And it's very important to do that. And I've done that with my life. So when I find that it's time to go, it's time to go. So, and I've known that with different things in my life, whether I used to be ace pizza maker, and I was a bouncer, and then I was a DJ, and I was a drummer. And there's certain things that I just say, like, I'm ready for something different. Like I said, I want more. I want more in my life, right? It's time for something else. I feel it. It's not something that's, it's not like a premeditated thing. It happens.
Just let that go.
No, it's like Brooklyn. It makes me feel quite at home.
So it's gone the other way. I mean, there's been, so I just cut the time just while I said, there's been some buses and stuff, but it's quite nice.
Yeah.
It just feels like traffic.
No, sure. Yeah, it was just I didn't know how much longer that was going to be there for, so I was a bit concerned.
That was if you could just, once you lit your cigar, David, if you could just pick up on the I want more again, because that's a nice way to.
So doing these different things in my life, it like going back to that suicidal song that I loved, I Want More. I feel like I want more. I remember there was a time when I was a DJ and I was making great money and I was having a blast. And I could write a book just about that those days, literally. But I felt like I was cut out for more.
So do you want more now, or is this what you're going to do now for the rest of your days? Are you going to be a ring announcer until you're in your buffer vintage?
Well, I'm doing more.
No, but do you know what I mean?
But
Like,
no, I do. But let me answer the question.
Sure.
I'm doing more. I mean, first of all, I love ring announcing and I love boxing. I always have. But I'm a business owner, so I still have my cigar business. Maybe I don't have the lounge right now, but I'm opening up a new spot. Still traveling, want to be a father. So there's going to be more things happening. And I can't tell what's going to happen if I want to still be a ring announcer. But as of now, I mean, as the British would say, I'm chuffed. I'm made up. You know, I mean, I love what I do. Like I'm literally living my dream. And again, when I started this, I didn't think you could make a living at it. I didn't even think I could make money at it. I didn't do it for that. I just wanted to be a part of the sport. I wanted to get in where I fit in. And now to be able to be making a very good living at it and to be one of the top in the world, if not the top in the world, it's an amazing feeling. And, you know, to go from, you know, last week, the super middleweight championship of the world, this week, the heavyweight championship of the world, the week after that, the middleweight championship of the world, then holidays at home with my girl, you know, it's a blessing, brother. And then I'm straight back to the UK for more fights. It just doesn't stop. There's just so much going on, and I love it. Like, I love staying active, man. I feel like a shark. If I stop, I die.
I've really enjoyed it, David. Thanks for having us. I've got some questions from some listeners, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
David Wright says, well, we touched upon this. When did you last cut your hair? 1988.
88.
Do you remember the date?
Oh, no. I mean, I remember, though, the incident that happened. It'll probably be in my book. You know, it involved a street fight. And people didn't, like, I was there. Brother, I was there. And I almost gave my life for it. And some other people ran. And, you know, when you don't have your boys to have your back the way they should, that's a dangerous situation.
So when you had that haircut, you didn't leave and think that's the last one for a while?
I didn't think about my hair. that wasn't even a thought. But I wanted out of that life because I had believed so deeply in it. Yeah. Like, literally, that was my family. Again, this is real stuff, man. You know, I can't express to you enough. This is my life, man. This is not some joke. And people have no idea of the stuff that I went through. And you talk about, like, oh, people like you. Like, I don't care if people like me. And people that say things about, like, oh, you know, cut your hair or this, or, like, they don't. These people have if they knew a zillionth of what I've been through, they would just be like, whoa. I'm just being real. So, like, I don't let that bother me at all. Like, I know who I am. I fought my battles. I fought my battles. I went through those. I faced my fears in the streets with horrific stuff that we don't need to talk about now. But it got a lot worse than you can even imagine. And I went through it. And I'm here solid. So I know who I am. That's why I walk around like I got a big motherfucking set of balls, because I do. Because I know who I am. You know, I believe in myself. I have a very strong belief in myself. And so it's like, if you say that, like, cool, man, have a good life. Don't put hands on me. Then we're going to have a different situation. But like, I'm fine with who I am. I don't need to prove anything to anyone. You understand what I'm saying?
Sure.
So there's when you prove to yourself who you are, you're good with everything. And I am.
Derek Walmsley asks, how does the boxing scene differ from the music scene?
That's a really funny question. It's a great question. I have so much that I could say. That's why I'm laughing.
I didn't understand. You know, because when you compare the boxers with the artists, or when you compare the management people and the politics.
My mind is running right now with so many things to think about. But first of all, a lot of correlations. You know, you have all these, like, very small bands, right, that play like little clubs that very few people go to. And nowadays, I think, well, obviously we're in COVID, so it's all different now. But before COVID, the live music scene, I mean, it's still there, but it's not the way it used to be. But when I was coming up, these small gigs in these show halls, like, you know, all these, you know, the CBGBs and the 930 clubs and the Worcest halls and the back alleys and the Grog and Tankard and you know the barbecued iguana and the Hung Jury pub, all these like old school venues that we used to go see shows at. You know, there were shows, we had shows at Cedar Crest Ramp in Virginia. You know, Bad Brains played out there. We had all kinds of shows that would go on everywhere. So you have those in like the leisure centers, right? These little 4-round smokers or whatever, you know, and you have these white collar boxing, and you have these shows all over the world. And I've seen them because I've traveled over the world. I've seen boxing in a lot of different places. And, you know, I've been in Tijuana in a bar and seen fights like literally under a tent on the roof of a bar where people are throwing, you know, empty Tecate cans. You know, I actually saw, this is a funny story. I was in Tijuana one time. Got a lot of stories about Tijuana, but we won't go into those. But I was in Tijuana one time with a buddy of mine who's a matchmaker, a very prominent matchmaker, and we had an invite to go to a very high up person's house. We'll just leave it at that, okay, in Mexico. But we decided, no, we're going to go to this little bar to see boxing, right? Just, you know, and some of them is like a taxi driver versus a, you know, some of the fights were really good and some of them were just proper shite. And Samuel Peter came out, and I'm like, is that the Nigerian Nightmare? Is that Sam Peter? And he looked like he was fighting a binman. And I was like, what is he doing here? And I mean, knocked this guy out immediately, but he was trying to, you know, build his record up to get a fight back in the States. But it was just funny. Jeez. So, but the music scene then all goes up to the hugest shows in the world, right? Like, and I've seen from James Brown and B.B. King and Aretha Franklin to, I've seen some of the best, right? You know, seen the Stones tons of times. And I mean, I've seen from Stevie Wonder to Parliament to, I mean, just killer music, man. I've seen it. I've seen some great shows over the years. All the hardcore bands, I've seen them all. Like, man, back in the day, and those shows were violent, brother. They were violent. Now they're slam dancing at the Lilith Fair, you know. But back in the day, it wasn't like that. You know, I remember I was at a show one time at the Hung Jury Pub on H Street in Washington D.C., and the police came in and pulled their guns, and they thought it was a riot. They thought there was a riot happening because the whole place was in a massive pit.
Yeah.
But I mean, the pits were really violent back then. This was before slam dancing was in the mainstream. This was way back. And they pulled their guns, and they were like, "Praise pride!" And everyone's like, "Yo, what are you doing?" And they were like, "We're dancing," you know. They're like, "What?" You know, and people are bloodied and hang, like, you know, "We're dancing." They're like, it was crazy, you know. So they differ, but there's a lot of similarities.
Liam Tyre asks, what motivates you to stay sober and keep going?
Oh man, I mean, like, again, I have a fire in me. I don't know if you can feel it, but it's there, brother. It's there. It's there deep, and I couldn't imagine not being sober. I feel sorry for people that aren't sober. When these people go to a bar and drink all their pints, and they have to do that to get loose or to like try to talk to a girl, like, I'll talk to anyone. I don't need it to feel loose or to feel sexy or to feel bold or to feel, I don't need that. You know, a big thing too, check this out. This is very true. When I used to play drums, I used to get wasted, right? I'd be drunk off my ass doing whatever. And I thought I was great and I was nervous. This is true. I was really scared that I wasn't going to play as well when I was sober. Couldn't be farther from the truth. I stopped drinking. My playing just elevated. So I still get high every day on life. I mean, I get high off so many things in life, and it's way better than drugs. Drugs are fake.
Andrew Stagg asks, I see you've been visiting historical British cities. Which is your favourite? You should get up to Durham and see the cathedral and the castle.
Would love to see that. Thank you. It's hard to like list a favorite, right? There's so many great things to see in England, and I have been very fortunate to, you know, I'm a traveler, and I like to kind of get in those little nooks and crannies.
It's hard to imagine anything in England having the wow factor after some of the places you've been, though.
Well, I think one thing that's really important, and I think this also ties in with the last question about the excitement, is like, as jaded as I am and how much I know what goes on, and I've seen Under the Emperor's Clothes, I know what goes on, right? I'm not a fool. I still am like a kid in a lot of ways. Like, I still just like love life. I still love to see something I've never seen before. I just drove out to Sandwich and ate a sandwich. I know it's corny. I did it. I went to Rye. I went to Dover, to the White Cliffs. You know, I love to see these things I've always heard of. And sometimes they might fall a little short. You know, you go see the Monacan Piss in Brussels and it's, you know, about yay big and you're like, wait, that's what this is? But sometimes you see it and it blows you away. And either way, it's more about the people. Like I love, every city has a heartbeat. Every city has a soul. And when I go to these different cities, I feel it. And I like to talk to the people and find out what they're doing and what's happening in the city and what are the good restaurants, what gets them excited. You learn a lot.
Adam Prater asks, what's the biggest robbery you've had to announce a decision for? That's a great question. Because are there any way you've looked at a scorecard and be like, is that right?
Well, it's happened many times. And I won't name, as far as robberies, I don't want to name specific ones because I don't want to ever throw a commission under the bus. But I will say this. I specifically have had cards where they've been wrong. Just actually wrong. So I was doing a show. It was actually on ESPN. Got the card, looked at it, and I said, this isn't right. So I called the head commissioner over and I said, I think you need to look at this card. Oh, that's right. I said, please take a look at it. He did. He's, oh my God, this is wrong. They changed it, got it right. Thank God that happened. I will say this. There was a fight I did, Edwin La Bamba Rodriguez. Was it Edwin Rodriguez?
Sure, yeah.
Against Will Rosinski.
Okay.
This fight had been brewing, okay? And Will had a great amateur career. One of the top guys in the nation, Golden Glove champion, really hot prospect. And Edwin Rodriguez was a super tough guy. This fight was on Showtime. I think it was at the MGM. We do the fight. The fight was close. Close. Good fight. 10-rounder. Get the cards. I think it was a 10-rounder. Get the cards. 100-90 on all three. So I was like, oh, this is going to be a tough one. So I checked to make sure this is correct. Yep, it's correct. I announced it. A brawl broke out. Will's brother got his jaw broken. The whole place turned into a brawl. But I need fight fans to understand this. Boxing is scored on something called the 10-point must system. Okay? Talking to the judges afterwards, who are all very fine judges. Now, I'm not saying I go with that score. That's not what I'm saying. But I did talk to the judges. What they said, and this is true, if a fight is close as fine as frog hair, okay, if it's that close, but one guy wins the round, he gets 10 points, the other guy gets 9. And if that happens every round, it's 100-90. And it's how they viewed that fight. They knew it was close. They thought it was close, but they just thought Rodriguez just eked out each round. And it's how they scored it. So I understand that the score sometimes does not reflect the nature of the fight, but that's the system we use.
Jamie Ingleby asks, have you ever had a real nightmare pronouncing anyone's name?
No. I'm trying to think. Not too much. So again, another thing I did that people might not know is I had a TV show on NBC. I hosted a sports show called The Lights, short for The Highlights. Now this show was like, it was NBC's answer to ESPN's Sports Center, and I did it 5 days a week. It was a TV show. It aired on NBC Sports Network. Doing that show, we did all the highlights for all the major sports: hockey, basketball, football, baseball. Now, hockey is when you get the really tough names. Because of my travel, number one, but also for some reason, I do believe in a way that we're all kind of touched. We all have certain skills and special things that we're just good at, right? There's some things I know I'm not good at, and there's some things I'm really good at. And you kind of have to go with what you're good at. I've always been great at language, linguistics, pronunciation. Language language kind of comes to me pretty easily. I speak Spanish very well. I learned that just from traveling. I've been in every Spanish-speaking country in the world except for 2. So I not just once. I spent a lot of time living down in Colombia, Dominican Republic, having a business down there, doing all kinds of different things. So I spent a lot of time out of the country in these different places, and I had to. I remember the first time I went to Cuba many, many years ago, and people were speaking Spanish. It was like Chinese to me. I didn't know what they were saying, but I picked it up, and now I speak very well. And French, I speak French also, and you know, it's not as good now because I don't get to practice it as much, but I have a background in that. So in different languages. So I'm really pretty good at pronunciation. It's one of my fortes.
Are you still good on the drums?
I haven't played drums in a while, but I can play. It's one of those things like it's like walking. Like you never forget. I mean, my chops aren't going to be there, but like I can still play.
Isaac Cody asks, says, a truly wonderful guest. Congrats on being 28 years sober. Which fight would you most like to have worked on?
So I've been asked this before, and it's funny. So being a big history fan of the fights past, if I didn't announce it, I felt like I'm not supposed to announce it, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like there's so much coming in the future that's going to happen.
I was convinced you were going to say the fight of the century at the Garden, 1971, Ali Frazier.
Well, I'd love to have been there, right?
Yeah.
But it's not, I wasn't the announcer, so I wouldn't want it. Like, it's kind of like Back to the Future. Like, you're going back and you're actually changing, history, and I don't want to do that. So I don't really have one like that.
She also asked this, given the recent slip-up at the Jacobs-Rosado fight, what's your disaster moment?
My disaster moment is very easy to tell you. I did a fight at the Garden many years ago, and it was on St. Patrick's Day. Irish fighter, I don't want to name names. Colombian fighter, don't want to name names. JC Candello. Now, in the pre-week going up to the fight, you know, again, speak Spanish, used to live in Colombia, you know. So this guy, I'm like, you know, talking to him in Spanish. I knew his town. We had a great rapport, great guy. Well, the fight was pretty close. The judges didn't see it that way. They thought the Irish guy won. It's St. Patrick's Day at the Garden. It's going to be hard for him not to get the nod, right? So afterwards, and again, I'm pretty green at this point, not thinking what could happen is going to happen. After the fight, you know, and I really, again, having respect for all fighters, the Colombian guy really fought hard. He came to fight. I had a lot of respect for him. He was very nice to me after the fight, and he said, we were in the ring, and he said, after I announced the decision, he said, can I please say a couple words? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I felt like he had earned that, you know. So I gave him the mic. Very bad decision.
Oh, no, he went for it.
He said, New York, I want to thank you. I love your city. It's a beautiful city. The people are great, but your fucking judges suck. He said that. Wow. I grabbed that microphone quicker than you could believe it. And the commissioner at the time, it was Ron Scott Stevens. He just looked at me, and I knew I had messed up bad.
Won't be doing that again.
I won't be doing that again. It's funny, if you watch certain things, if you go back, like I did a Broner. I did a Q&A with Broner for Showtime before one of his big fights. It was actually his birthday, and he was like, yo, give me the mic. And I wouldn't give him the mic. And he tries to take the mic, and I wouldn't give it to him. And he's like, well, I'm not going to do your interview. I'm like, fine. I mean, I wasn't going to give him the mic. And the producer for Showtime said, give him the mic. So then I gave him the mic. So you'll see, I'll never give up my mic unless, if the producer says it, then it's on them. Whatever they say is on them. But if I give it to it, like Chisora, we were doing an open workout with Chisora in London, and he tried to get the mic, and I wouldn't give it to him. And we were like literally I wouldn't give it to him. And he was like, and then one of the matchroom guys said, you can give it to him, and I gave it to him.
Just on that, by the way, with the Jacobs Rosado one that was recent, did you sympathise with the guy, the announcer, or did you think he's messed up?
You know, it's a tough situation, so I feel for him, you know, and I hope he bounces back.
Yeah,
I hope he bounces back.
Well, it's a bit of a weird one to end it on talking about someone else, but I've really enjoyed the journey, and thank you very much for taking us on it. It's been incredible, and I very much look forward to the book.
Appreciate it, Tris. Thank you so much.
Hopefully we don't get too many more lockdowns so you can focus on it, though.
There you go.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
You got it, brother. Yeah. My man.
Brilliant.
Cool.
Thank you.